was going to be captured and deemed, those items were not considered, like the deliberation of the ministerial report.
Wow, that is the Africa I want.
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 And settlement system supported by Afrexim Bank, the African Union, and the AFCFTA that's connecting cross-border payments in.
It is the perception that
شعوبنا إلى إفريقيا مستقرة.
Minister for Foreign Affairs in Mauritania and the chairman.
In what is being called the opening ceremony now. Kindly call upon.
Is that the path to global food security begins from the soil.
2063. The Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development.
Once again, I welcome you to Kenya, and I'm looking
State and government during the extraordinary and other productive sectors of our economy to negatively impact Africa's agricultural production. Fertilizers at half the commercial prices to cushion of the action plan I realize.
However, we have also 33 countries that...
to deploy enough resources.
I thank the government of Kenya and the African Union Commission for organizing this important summit. And I want to thank once again the government of Kenya for the hospitality accorded to us for the last 2 days. Thank you, Right Honorable Prime Secretary. The summit is very timely because it offers us an opportunity as farming countries of Africa to discuss common approaches to handling the issue of our soil health. Every country seeks to achieve food security. Every country seeks to achieve animal feed security. Every country is seeking to achieve nutrition security. And every country is seeking to achieve environmental security. So the question is, how do we balance our food, our feed, our environment, and at the same time produce nutritious food? To achieve that positive balance, Your Excellencies, we have to pay attention to our soil. It is the starting point for all other interventions, and that's why I say that the summit is very timely. So for us to farm sustainably and produce and feed our people sustainably, we must keep our soils healthy and productive. We have to reverse the current trend of fertility loss, estimated at 80 kilograms of nutrients per hectare per year, and equally work on strategies to minimize topsoil erosion exacerbated by climate change. Our partner FAO has reported about 33% of the Earth's soils are already degraded, and over 90% could become so by year 2050. This therefore necessitates the need for replenishing what is being lost. To reverse this trend, which is common amongst our countries, we must pay attention to the Abuja Summit Declaration of 2006 and ensure that we apply at least 50 kilograms of nutrients per hectare per year by 2015. The factors or the challenges or the pull down side factors we have all acknowledged is the cost of fertilizer. It is the low investment in fertilizer production. It is the perception that traditionally our soils are rich and therefore no need for fertilizer. And of course, we also have the low capacity and knowledge by our smallholder farmers. And now with world global wars, supply chains have become a problem, and therefore importation of fertilizer becomes capital intensive. So these are the challenges we must face and discuss to solve together.
Please allow me to start by welcoming you to the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit, which aims at paving the way for the transformation of Africa's agriculture and agri-food systems. I take this opportunity to thank the government of Kenya for graciously accepting to host this summit here in Nairobi. I would also like to extend my sympathies to the families that lost their loved ones in the recent floods that occurred in different parts of this green country. Allow me to extend special thanks to my sister, Her Excellency, Ambassador Joseph Asako, for her leadership and tireless effort to ensure a successful holding of this summit after being postponed twice last year. This summit could not be held at a more opportune time than now, when the impact of COVID-19 coupled with the conflict in Ukraine, the multiple conflicts on the continent, and climate change is felt through low agricultural productivity and slowing economic growth. You will recall that in 2006, African heads of state and government endorsed the Abuja Declaration on fertilizers for a green revolution in Africa, with a target of 50 kilograms per hectare per annum. To date, our continent is still far from achieving this target, with an average fertilizer use rate standing at about 18 kilograms. In order to bridge the productivity gap with the rest of the world, Africa needs to take bold measures. This can only be done by agreeing on common measures, informed lessons from others from within and outside the continent on best practices. As dictated by the theme of this summit, which is "Listen to the Soil," a quote by Franklin Roosevelt reminds us that the nation that destroys its soil destroys itself. End of quote. Let us pay attention to our soils, understanding their needs and what make them more productive and responsive to our needs for now and for the future. Without being prescriptive, we need to promote proven soil management practices applicable to local contexts for the overall good of every individual on the continent and beyond. I would like to echo what is said about our soil, that indeed our soil is the reservoir of our water. It is the home of several microorganisms, insects, and other living organisms. And on the chemistry side, our soil is a source of and sink of soil nutrients. It plays a major role in attenuating toxic substances from the Earth's surface. This is vital to the sustenance of life on Earth. More importantly, and in recent decades, the role of our soil as the sink for carbon is a vital management resource for adaptation and mitigation of climate change.
I'm happy to be part of this ministerial session for agriculture and foreign affairs on this second day of the African Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit today. We are happy as a country and as a Ministry of Agriculture to have hosted this great event for the next 3 days. As agriculture ministers, we presented our country's statements and key interventions towards achievements of the Abuja Declaration. We acknowledge that the path to global food security begins from the soil. We need to take care of the soil in order to feed the world. We were also privileged to receive statements from the regional economic communities and partners who pledged their support and alignment to the aspiration of the African Union on food security and sustainable agricultural development. Further, we discussed and gave our inputs on Soil Initiative for Africa, the 10-year Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan, and draft Nairobi Declaration on Fertilizer and Soil Health. The Soil Health Initiative for Africa intends to establish a system to improve soil health and fertility across the continent. This system will improve agricultural productivity, economic growth, sustainable livelihoods, water availability, and sustainable natural resources-based and adaptation and mitigation of the climate change. The 10-year action plan will contribute to revising soil degradation, increasing fertilizer consumption and efficiency, accelerating inclusive agricultural transformation, and enduring hunger, malnutrition, and poverty on the continent of Africa. The Nairobi Declaration gives commitment on fertilizer use, soil health, financing, creating an enabling environment, and capacity enhancement to support implementation. The documents enable us to develop the Agricultural Ministerial Report for concurrence with our foreign affairs counterparts, touching on areas such as policy harmonization, strengthening institutional capacity, facilitating regional trade, and domestication of regional aspiration into national action plans. Ladies and gentlemen and excellencies, we are privileged as a country and as a ministry to have fostered you on this engagement, and we have no doubt that as African continent and as ministers for agriculture, we'll finally carry the day as we try to listen to the soil so that we can provide the livelihood for the people of Africa and to work on the nutrients content required for our soil. Once again, I welcome you to Kenya, and I'm looking forward to fruitful discussion for the next 2 days so that as African leaders, we can make deliberate decisions to support food security for African people.
I'm pleased to welcome you once again to this forum, and in particular, my colleagues, ministers of foreign affairs, who are joining us today. It is a great honor and privilege to be part of this joint meeting between the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and Ministers of Agriculture. Our joint agenda is to review the outcome of the deliberations of yesterday's meeting that brought together policymakers and experts as well as various stakeholders on Africa fertilizer and soil health. Our deliberations today therefore will aim to consolidate the key outcomes and commitments that will be geared to address the widespread and long-decade decline in soil quality, a phenomenon that continues to negatively impact Africa's agricultural production capacity and food security. You will recall that the Abuja Declaration adopted in June 2006 positioned fertilizer as a vital strategic resource to increase crop yields and to address the associated impacts of food insecurity and low income for small-scale farmers. Since its adoption, low agricultural productivity, food insecurity, and land degradation remain the foremost among the key challenges hampering Africa's ability to provide sustainable food and nutrition security to its people. It is therefore befitting that this summit is convened at this juncture for the continent to take decisive steps to sustainably increase agricultural productivity while mitigating the fertilizer-related contributions to climate change. Africa has set multiple goals under Agenda 2063. The Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Programme, CAADP, the Malabo Declaration, and Africa's climate change strategy to increase agricultural productivity and production. These goals focus on environmentally sustainable and climate-resilient production, improved water productivity and security, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable natural resource management. A crucial requirement for achieving these goals is to improve soil health in all agricultural and subsectors across the continent through a combination of sustainable agricultural practices and approaches. I am happy to note that Kenya has embarked on a program to boost its agricultural sector by providing small-scale farmers with subsidized fertilizers at half the commercial prices to cushion them against high costs of fertilizer. It is my conviction, therefore, that all the AU member states are embarking on implementing various strategies to address the challenges of sustainable food production and hence the importance of addressing usage of fertilizer and soil health. The importance of agriculture in our economies cannot be gainsaid. Here in Kenya, the agricultural sector contributes approximately a third, that is 33%, of Kenya's gross domestic product, and employs over 40% of the total population, including 70% of the rural population. Therefore, the outcomes of this discourse on fertilizer and soil health will positively impact the agricultural sector and ultimately the economy. Your Excellencies, I take this opportunity to appreciate the deliberations from the report by the Ministers of Agriculture. We take note of the challenges faced in the operationalization of the Abuja Declaration and call for concerted efforts towards implementing the 10-year action plan that we will endorse. This will guide our policies and investments to enhance soil health, boost fertilizer effectiveness, and increase farmers' yields and profitability. Our joint meeting will deliberate on the draft Nairobi Declaration with a view to making appropriate recommendations for consideration and adoption by the heads of state and government during the extraordinary summit that Kenya is pleased to host. In this regard, it is my hope that the declaration will capture the aspirations of the stakeholders in the agriculture sector, and in particular, the small-scale and marginalized farmers who constitute the majority across Africa. We should also put in place affirmative action for inclusivity of women and youth. It will ensure the realization of Agenda 2063's comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program goals, which envisage the elimination of hunger and reduction of poverty by raising economic growth through agriculture-led development. The Nairobi Declaration will therefore provide a concrete action plan for ensuring sufficient, nutritious, and quality African-produced food on our tables across the continent. Indeed, This will significantly reduce the bill on foreign food imports and dependence, thus freeing much-needed resources for investment in other productive sectors of our economy. I urge development partners, financial institutions, private sector, and all stakeholders to rally behind the collective outcomes of this summit and support the financing for implementation of various activities of the Nairobi Declaration Action Plan. Let me conclude by emphasizing the importance of our collective efforts to effectively address the common challenges that continue to strain our already dire food security situation. I wish to reiterate Kenya's commitment to work closely with the African Union member states and all relevant stakeholders to ensure the objective of the action plan are realized. I wish you successful deliberations and thank you once again.
So on behalf of the African Union Commission, I welcome Your Excellencies to Day 2 of 2024 African Fertilizer and Soil Health Special Summit. And once again, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the government of Kenya for partnering with us to host this event. Yesterday, we had very rich and extensive deliberations by our ministers of agriculture. Today's joint deliberation by the esteemed ministers of foreign affairs and as well as ministers of agriculture of the African Union member state is to continue the rich deliberation which will guide us to come up with the summit declaration. Once again, I welcome Your Excellencies to this event and I thank you very much for kind attention. Asante sana.